The wedding invitation sat on my desk for 3 weeks before I finally sealed it and dropped it in the mail. My hands had trembled as I wrote their names on the elegant cream envelope. Mr. and Mrs. Richard and Patricia Blackwood. Even after 28 years of being their daughter, I still felt like I was asking permission to exist in their world. I'm Maya Blackwood, or I was, before I became Maya Chen. I grew up in the sprawling Blackwood estate in Connecticut, where old money whispered through the hallways and family legacy hung heavier than the crystal chandeliers. My older brother Cameron was the golden child, the heir apparent to my father's investment firm. My younger sister Vanessa was the social butterfly, beautiful and charming, already engaged to a senator's son. And then there was me, sandwiched in the middle, always slightly out of focus in the family portrait. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. I became a software engineer, which my father dismissed as technical work despite my 6-figure salary. I dated James Chen, the son of immigrants who owned a successful restaurant chain, which my mother described as quaint, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When James proposed to me on a beach in Hawaii, presenting a ring he'd saved for a year to buy, I cried tears of joy. When I told my parents, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," and returned to planning Vanessa's engagement party. The wedding invitation I sent them wasn't just paper and ink. It was an olive branch, a final attempt to matter in their eyes. James and I were getting married at a small vineyard upstate. Nothing extravagant, just 80 guests who actually loved us. I included a handwritten note. "Mom and Dad, it would mean the world to have you there. Love, Maya." 3 days before the wedding, I called them. "Mom, did you get the invitation?" "Oh, yes, sweetheart. It's lovely." A pause. "But your father and I won't be able to make it. Cameron has an important business conference that weekend, and we promised we'd be there to support him. You understand?" I felt something crack inside my chest. "Mom, it's my wedding." "I know, and we feel terrible about it, but Cameron's presentation could make or break his partnership promotion. This is his career, Maya. Surely you can see this is important." "And my wedding isn't?" "Don't be dramatic. You'll have your day. We'll see photos. Besides, it's just a small gathering, isn't it? Not like when Vanessa gets married. That'll be the event of the season." I hung up without saying goodbye. James found me crying in our apartment bathroom, mascara streaming down my face. He held me while I sobbed, and he didn't say anything, which was exactly what I needed. Words wouldn't have fixed the hollow ache of knowing I'd never been enough for them. The wedding day arrived wrapped in golden September sunshine. James's parents flew in from California and embraced me like I was already their daughter. My college friends arrived with champagne and laughter. My favorite professor from MIT walked me down the aisle since my father couldn't be bothered to show up. And as I said my vows to James, looking into his eyes that saw me, really saw me, I realized something profound. I didn't need them anymore. But understanding that intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. For weeks after the wedding, I jumped every time my phone rang, irrationally hoping they'd call to apologize. They didn't. Instead, my mother texted, "Hope your little wedding was nice. Send photos when you can. XOXO, little wedding." Those words festered. 3 months later, everything changed with a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Blackwood, this is Gerald Henderson from Henderson and Associates. I'm an attorney handling the estate of Margaret Whitmore. She's listed you as her primary beneficiary." I nearly dropped my phone. "Aunt Margaret?" Margaret Whitmore was my grandmother's sister, a woman who'd always been spoken about in whispers at family gatherings. She'd been the black sheep, the one who'd refused to marry the man her family chose, who'd moved to California in the 1960s and made a fortune in early tech investments. She'd sent me birthday cards every year with notes about being brave and true to myself. I hadn't known she'd been ill. Ms. Whitmore passed away last month. She left you her investment portfolio, her property in Napa Valley, and specific instructions. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. The estate is valued at approximately $8.4 million. The world tilted sideways. Over the next few weeks, I learned that Aunt Margaret had been far wealthier than anyone in the family knew. She'd watched me from afar, Mr. Henderson explained, proud of how I'd carved my own path. The inheritance came with a letter, written in her elegant script. "Dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but I hope my final gift helps you understand your worth. I was like you once, never quite fitting into the Blackwood mold. Your grandmother was Patricia, the favorite. I was Margaret, the disappointment. But I learned that being a disappointment to people who don't value you is actually the highest compliment. Build something beautiful with this money. Build a life that makes you happy. And if you can manage it, show those stiff-necked Blackwoods what they lost when they overlooked you. With all my love, Aunt Maggie." I read that letter 50 times, crying every single time. James and I discussed what to do with the money carefully. We decided to keep working. We both loved our jobs, but we'd allow ourselves some luxuries. James had always dreamed of starting a nonprofit coding academy for underprivileged kids. I'd always wanted to invest in startups founded by women and minorities. We'd fund both. But first, I bought the Porsche. It wasn't just any Porsche. It was a 911 Turbo S in Miami blue, a color so vibrant it looked like liquid sky. $135,000 of German engineering and pure automotive art. I didn't need it. I took the subway to work, but I wanted it, and more importantly, I wanted them to see it. The plan formed slowly, deliberately, like a photograph developing in solution. My parents were hosting their annual charity gala at the estate, a black tie event where Connecticut's elite gathered to write tax-deductible checks and pat themselves on the back. I'd been invited the way one invites a distant cousin, a perfunctory gesture expecting decline. This year, I RSVP'd yes. The night of the gala, I dressed in a custom Tom Ford suit, midnight blue with subtle silk lapels. James wore a classic tuxedo. We looked like we'd stepped out of a magazine spread, and we arrived in the Porsche. The valet's eyes widened as we pulled up the circular drive. I tossed the keys to the young man standing there, and his hands trembled as he caught them. "Be careful with her," I said with a smile. "She's temperamental." Walking into my childhood home felt surreal. The marble foyer gleamed with the same cold perfection I remembered. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the ballroom. Waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. And there, holding court near the grand staircase, were my parents. My mother saw me first. Her expressions cycled through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pleasure. "Maya, what a wonderful surprise. We didn't think you'd actually come." My father turned, his eyes doing a quick assessment of my appearance, the same way he'd appraise a potential investment. "Maya, you look prosperous." "Thank you, Dad. James and I are doing well." Cameron materialized from somewhere, Vanessa trailing behind him with her senator's son, fiancé. My brother's eyes narrowed slightly. He'd always been better at reading subtext than our parents. "Quite an entrance," Cameron said smoothly. "New car?" "Porsche 911 Turbo S," I replied casually. I thought it was time to treat myself. My mother's smile became strained. "How nice. Software engineering must be doing quite well these days." "Oh, I'm still in software, Mom. The car is actually from Aunt Margaret's inheritance." The silence that followed was delicious. My father's champagne glass paused halfway to his lips. Vanessa's eyes went wide. Cameron's jaw actually tightened. "Margaret?" my mother said faintly. "But she didn't have—" $8.4 million, I said pleasantly. "Give or take. She left it all to me. Well, technically, there's also a vineyard in Napa, some other properties, stock portfolios." I waved my hand dismissively. "The lawyers are still working through everything." My father recovered first, his business instincts kicking in. That's wonderful news, Maya. Margaret always was shrewd with investments. We should sit down, discuss how you're planning to manage those assets. I can introduce you to my wealth management team." "That won't be necessary. I have my own team now, but thank you." "Maya," my mother said, her voice taking on that syrupy quality she used when she wanted something. "We really should get together soon. It's been too long since we've had a proper family dinner. I feel terrible that we missed your wedding. Perhaps we could throw you a reception? Something elegant with all the right people?" There it was, the shift. Suddenly I was visible to them. Suddenly I mattered. "You feel terrible about missing my wedding," I repeated slowly. "The wedding I invited you to months in advance? The wedding you skipped to attend Cameron's business conference?" My mother's cheeks flushed. Around us, other guests were starting to notice the tension, conversations quieting as they sensed drama. "Now, Maya," my father interjected, "let's not make a scene. Your mother explained the circumstances. Cameron's career was more important than my wedding. Yes, I know. You've made your priorities very clear for 28 years." Cameron stepped forward, his voice low and warning. "Maya, this isn't the place." "No?" I looked around at the glittering crowd, at the society matrons and business moguls who formed my parents' world. "I think this is exactly the place. Because this is what matters to you, isn't it? Appearances, status, money." "You're being unfair," Vanessa said, her voice small. For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. I turned to my sister and my voice softened. "Am I? Vanessa, when was the last time Mom and Dad came to one of my work events? When was the last time they asked about my life, my achievements, anything that mattered to me?" I paused. "They didn't come to my wedding, Van. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't think it was important enough." Tears shimmered in Vanessa's eyes, and I realized with a start that she understood. Perhaps she'd always understood. I turned back to my parents. Here's what's interesting about Aunt Margaret's inheritance. She included a letter explaining why she left everything to me. She wrote about being the overlooked one, the disappointment, the daughter who never quite measured up to her perfect sister, my grandmother Patricia, who you named Mom after. My mother went pale. Aunt Margaret became successful despite being dismissed by her family, and she wanted to give me the resources to do the same. She told me to build something beautiful and, if possible, to show you what you lost when you overlooked me. "Maya," my father said sharply, "you're being childish. We're your parents. We've always supported you." "Have you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "You dismissed my career. You looked down on my husband because his parents weren't from the right social class. You couldn't spare one day to watch me get married because Cameron had a business presentation, which, by the way, I looked up. He didn't even land that partnership." Cameron's face went red. "But you know what the real kicker is? I would have forgiven all of it if you'd just apologized, if you'd acknowledged that you hurt me. Instead, you never even called after the wedding, never asked to see photos, never asked if I was happy, nothing. Until tonight, when you found out I have money. Then suddenly you want family dinners and receptions and to be involved in my life." My mother's carefully maintained composure cracked. "We're your family, Maya. You can't just—" "Can't what?" Set boundaries? Expect basic respect? You're right, you're my family. But family is supposed to show up. Family is supposed to care. And for most of my life, you've made it clear that I'm the consolation child. The one you had between the golden boy and the beauty queen. The technical daughter doing technical work with her technical husband. James's hand found mine, squeezing gently. His support gave me strength. I didn't come here tonight to make a scene, I continued, my voice steadier now. I came because I wanted to see if you'd notice me for myself, or only for what I now have. And you've answered that question definitively. You're being dramatic, my father blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. Around us, the gala guests watched with rapt attention, phones subtly appearing as they sensed this would be the story they'd dine out on for months. Am I? Let me ask you something, Dad. What's my favorite color? What was my major at MIT? What's the name of my company? What did James propose with? What kind of ring? Silence. You don't know, do you? You've never known because you've never cared to know. Cameron's favorite scotch is Macallan 25. Vanessa takes her coffee with oat milk and cinnamon. But me, I'm the daughter-shaped blank space in your family portrait. My mother's tears were flowing now, ruining her makeup. Part of me felt guilty for causing her pain. But a larger part, the part that had ached for years, felt vindicated. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. I'm going to leave now. James and I are going to get in my supposedly too flashy car, drive to our apartment that you've never visited, and continue building our life together. A life full of people who actually love us. Maya, please, my mother whispered, don't do this. Do what? Live authentically? Surround myself with people who value me? Mom, I'm not cutting you off forever. But I need you to understand that relationships require effort from both sides. If you want to be in my life, you need to show up, really show up, not just when it's convenient or when I have something you want. I started to turn away, then stopped. Oh, and Mom, my favorite color is deep purple. I majored in computer science with a minor in mathematics. I work for a cybersecurity firm called Sentinel Solutions, and I just made senior architect. And James proposed with a sapphire ring because he knows I've never liked diamonds. The walk back to the car felt like walking through water. My legs trembled, adrenaline and emotion, making my hands shake as the valet brought the Porsche round. James opened my door and I sank into the leather seat, suddenly exhausted. We drove in silence for several miles before James spoke. You were magnificent, he said softly. I was mean. You were honest. There's a difference. My mother was crying. Your mother has made you cry for years. Sometimes people need to feel the consequences of their actions. I turned to look at him, this man who'd loved me when I felt unlovable, who'd stood beside me when my own family couldn't be bothered. Did I do the right thing? Only you can answer that. But Maya, you've been diminishing yourself for their comfort your entire life. Maybe it's time they experience some discomfort for yours. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation over and over. Had I gone too far? Should I have been more diplomatic? But then I'd remember the look on my mother's face when she'd seen the Porsche, the sudden interest in my life that hadn't existed before, and I'd feel that righteous anger kindle again. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. Vanessa, I'm sorry. You were right about everything. They're downstairs arguing. Mom's devastated. Dad's furious. Cameron's defensive. But Van, they never asked how you were. Even now they're talking about how this looks, how to manage the fallout, not about how they hurt you. I see it now. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. I read the message 3 times, tears sliding down my cheeks. At least someone in my family understood. The next few days brought an avalanche of responses. My mother called 17 times. I let them all go to voicemail. My father sent terse emails requesting a meeting. Cameron sent a long text about family loyalty and forgiveness that completely missed the point. But it was Vanessa's daily messages that touched me. Simple check-ins, no pressure, just sister to sister. A week after the gala, I received a letter. Actual paper and pen, delivered by courier. My mother's handwriting, usually perfect, was shaky. Maya, I don't know how to start this except to say you were right. Completely, devastatingly right. I've spent the last week thinking about your childhood, and I'm horrified by what I see. You deserved better. You deserved parents who celebrated you, not just your siblings. Your father and I got caught up in the life we thought we should live. The expectations, the society pressures. We treated you like an afterthought, and that is unforgivable. I can't change the past. I can't undo missing your wedding or the thousands of small dismissals that came before. But I want to try to do better. Not because of your inheritance. Please believe me when I say that. Because you're my daughter, and I've failed you. I understand if you don't want to see me. I understand if you need time or space, or if you never want to speak to me again. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry and I'm ashamed and I love you. I've always loved you. I just did a terrible job of showing it, Mom. I read that letter in my car, parked in a grocery store parking lot, sobbing so hard I couldn't see. It was everything I'd wanted to hear for years. But was it real? Or was it just guilt and social embarrassment talking? James found me there an hour later. I'd texted him incoherently, and he'd tracked my phone. He read the letter while I composed myself. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe her, but part of me is terrified this is just another performance. Then test it, set boundaries, see if she respects them." So I did. I sent my mother an email. "Mom, thank you for your letter. I appreciate your apology. Here's what I need if we're going to rebuild our relationship. 1. Regular contact that isn't just about family obligations. Call me once a week just to talk. 2. Interest in my actual life. Ask me about work, about James, about our plans and dreams. 3. Respect for my boundaries. If I say I need space, honor that. 4. Acknowledgement of James as an equal member of this family. No more subtle digs about his background. 5. Time. This won't heal overnight. If you can commit to these things, we can start having coffee once a month. Just the two of us. No pressure, no audience, just honest conversation. Let me know. Maya. Her response came within an hour. Yes, to all of it. Thank you for giving me a chance. When can we have coffee? Our first coffee meeting was awkward. We sat in a quiet cafe in Manhattan, both nervous, both too aware of the chasm between us. My mother asked about my work, really asked, taking notes when I explained a project. She asked about James's nonprofit, his family, our apartment. She didn't mention the gala or the Porsche or the inheritance. And when I talked about the wedding, about how beautiful the vineyard had been, she cried quietly and said, "I should have been there. I'll regret that forever." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a movie reconciliation with swelling music and instant forgiveness. But it was real, and it was a start. Over the following months, my mother showed up. Weekly phone calls where she asked about my day and actually listened. She came to my apartment, gasped over how beautifully we decorated it, and had dinner with James's parents, where she was genuinely warm. She sent me articles about cybersecurity she'd found interesting. She remembered my birthday without Vanessa reminding her. My father took longer. His apology, when it finally came, was stiff and uncomfortable. Admitting fault wasn't in his nature, but he tried. He invited James and me to a Rangers game, just the three of us, and spent the evening asking James about his academy, genuinely engaged. He called me for advice on a cybersecurity issue at his firm, treating me like the expert I was. Cameron struggled the most. His identity had been so wrapped up in being the favorite that my parents' shift in attention felt like a demotion. We had a long, painful conversation where I explained I wasn't trying to take his place, I just wanted my own place. Eventually, he understood. We'd never be close, but we reached an uneasy peace. Vanessa became my surprise ally. She started questioning things too, pushing back when our parents fell into old patterns. She delayed her society wedding and eloped instead, marrying her fiancé on a beach in Thailand with just close friends. My parents were shocked, but they attended via video call and threw her a casual celebration when she returned. Growth, slow and imperfect, but growth nonetheless. A year after the gala, James and I hosted Thanksgiving at our new house. We'd bought a beautiful old brownstone in Brooklyn with some of the inheritance money. Both our families came, my parents, James's parents, my siblings, and their partners. It wasn't the sterile perfection of the Blackwood estate. It was warm and chaotic and full of laughter. As I watched my mother help James's mom in the kitchen, chatting like old friends, as I saw my father showing my father-in-law photos of our wedding, which he'd finally asked to see, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly. Some wounds take longer to heal. But hope. Hope that people could change. Hope that families could rebuild. The Porsche sat in the garage, a beautiful reminder of Aunt Margaret and the inheritance that had catalyzed everything. But I realized it was never really about the car. It was about visibility, about demanding to be seen, about refusing to make myself small for other people's comfort. James found me standing alone on our back porch, taking a moment of quiet amid the chaos. "Regrets?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "About calling them out? No. About giving them another chance? We'll see. But I think Aunt Margaret would approve. I think Aunt Margaret would be incredibly proud of you regardless." I leaned back against him, watching through the window as my family, complicated, flawed, but trying, gathered around our table. The road to get here had been painful. Standing up to my parents at the gala had been terrifying. The months of difficult conversations and boundary setting had been exhausting. But I'd learned something crucial. You teach people how to treat you. And sometimes teaching them requires showing them what happens when they don't. The inheritance hadn't bought their love, but it had given me the confidence to demand respect, to stand tall in my worth, to stop apologizing for taking up space in their lives. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Thank you for this, for giving us another chance." "I know we don't deserve it," I typed back. "We all deserve chances to grow. But Mom, this only works if you keep showing up. I will. I promise." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and James and I were cleaning up, I found myself thinking about that wedding invitation I'd sent a year ago, the one they'd ignored. In a strange way, their absence had been the catalyst for everything that followed. It had forced me to confront the truth of our relationship. It had led to me claiming my space, my worth, my voice. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in pain. Sometimes being overlooked is the push you need to step fully into the light. I thought of Aunt Margaret, the black sheep who'd become the success story, who'd seen in me a kindred spirit. I hoped she was somewhere, smiling, proud of the mess I'd made and the growth that had sprouted from it. "Come to bed," James called from upstairs. I took one last look at the kitchen, our kitchen, in our house, in the life we'd built together, and smiled. I didn't need my parents' validation anymore, but I'd discovered something better. I'd learned to validate myself. And in doing so, I'd given them the opportunity to be better, to choose me, Not because I had money, but because I was their daughter and I deserved to be chosen. Whether they would continue to make that choice remained to be seen. But for the first time in my life, their choice didn't define my worth. I was enough. I'd always been enough. And that realization was worth more than any inheritance, any Porsche, any society gala. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, to my husband, to my life, to my future. Finally, fully seen.